Hello and welcome to the Women Fantasy Authors YouTube channel. I'm Janet Hinker and my guest today is Barbara Evers. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Janet. Thank you for
Hi.
having me here.
Yep. And she's the author of the Watchers of Manoa trilogy. And we're going to be talking about that today and some other things. And I wanted to start off with one thing in particular, Barbara. We're all familiar with the animals that we generally see in fantasy, the bears, the wolves, the birds of prey, the dragons, and you have chosen a very unique animal for your story. And I'd like to hear about your connection to the giraffes and why you decided to use them in your story.
It kind of happened organically, but I have been fascinated with giraffes ever since I was about 16, 17 years old. So I love giraffes, and I'll a brief I had an encounter, I guess you would say, with a giraffe at the Washington Zoo when I was 16. I was bored, got tired of wandering around with my family, sat down and waited on him. I kind of went ahead, and then I stopped at the giraffe enclosure. And this giraffe and I just stared at each other the whole time. And from that point on, I was hooked because this giraffe was very curious. They are curious animals. And, I'd never really paid much attention to them until then. As you can probably see back here, I have several giraffe images on my desk. People give them to me all the time. And
Yes.
my last count, there's probably somewhere in the vicinity of 400 giraffe somethings in my house, whether it be statue, clothing, jewelry, pictures, dishes. It's even on my water cup. You probably know what it's there. There's a giraffe there. And most of them have been given to me. As far as how the giraffe ended up in the Watchers of Manoa, I'm not sure when that happened. I don't think I had the giraffe originally, but I started writing this so long ago. It took me a long time before I actually got it published. So I started writing it a long time ago, and the Watchers were based off of learning styles. Actually, I'm a corporate trainer, and people's learning styles are visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. And let's do something that's visual, people with enhanced vision. And somewhere along the lines, I saw something about a giraffe being the watchtower of Africa. And I wanted that kind of flat, barren kind of landscape. It's not Africa in my book. It's a totally different world or whatever. But I was like, no, I love giraffes. I wonder if I can't pull giraffe into my story. And so, it happened. It's a fun part, I think. I think it's unique. It's so unique. A lot of agents were like, I don't know what to do with you. But at the same point, when I go and I talk to people about my book and I tell them, and they're a telepathic giraffe, their eyes light up, they grin, and they say, I got to know a little bit more about this.
Yeah.
So it is unique, and there's a whole giraffe culture out there of people who love giraffes. And they really get excited. I get a lot of readers just because they like giraffes.
Well, the last time I was in a zoo a couple of years ago, I also spent some time watching the giraffes, and they're so gangly and they're put together in a way that seems awkward, and they're actually very regal, and they move very quickly, and it's beautiful to watch them. So I totally get why they were connected to royalty in your story. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to emphasize about this book are your world building. And let me read a little blurb off the back of book number 2.
Okay.
This is by David Coe, author. And he says, a tale of intrigue and romance set in a unique and skillfully rendered world. The Watchers of Manoa will keep readers riveted from the first page to last. Highly recommended. And what I wanted to emphasize here was the skillfully rendered world. All the details about the world are very vivid, and I was really impressed in book 2 with your funeral scene. There was a royal funeral scene, and it was very detailed. The ritual of it was very detailed and very rich. So I'm wondering, did you do a lot of studying of mythology and world traditions to write the book, or is this all out of your imagination?
I won't say, well, I didn't do research. This came out of my imagination, but we are, everything that has been part of our lives up until that point where you write something is part of what makes you write it. I am such an avid reader. I read so much, and I read a lot of fantasy. So I know there's a lot of ritual, a lot of tradition, a lot of things. And I knew I needed something very ritualistic in this particular ceremony. And I was like, so what am I going to do? And I just put fingers to keyboard. And sometimes that's literally what happens. You put fingers to keyboard and it comes out. And that came out. And I have to admit, I was pretty excited about how that thing turned out. And I don't know where I created it. I just knew that Glimmerfire was part of it, and that it was somehow had to be some way shared between Kiffin and Adana. And boom, here was this thing.
Well, it worked because it stood out to me, and I remembered it, from reading. I'm at the end of book 2. I haven't gotten to book 3 yet, so I remembered it. So it really was rich, and it speaks to your writing style, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
All of your books have Watchers in the title. So can you tell us a little bit about who the Watchers are and why they're important to the story?
Okay. So the Watchers are female warriors they're kind of like the Secret Service. They are established as warriors who protect the royal family, specifically the queen and her heir. They have enhanced sight. So this is a gift from the creator. And you've read the second book, you're almost done. So you've learned about the gifted ones, and there's actually others. But the Watchers are gifted with enhanced sight, so they're able to hit a target that most people can't hit. You actually get that in that first chapter of the first book with Adana trying to pass this trial with her visual and hitting the target through archery and doing something that I have a friend who does archery, and he's like, yeah, that would be really, really hard. So they have that skill and that ability because of this enhanced sight, but that sight also allows them to look across the landscape. And in Manaya, the landscape is more barren and flat. So they can detect things along the horizon that the normal person would not see. So they can see danger coming or arrivals or any kind of warning. They also are good at reading body language. So one of the things that Watchers do is they mask their own body language. They are very stoic in their body language because they don't want other people to read them. But that's what they do. They read people, they read signs and so forth. And it's just this enhanced vision that they've given. And like I said, I took learning styles because I'm a corporate trainer, and one of them is visual. And I said, what would happen if we enhanced that? If we really gave that as this special gift to people? And the Watchers was one.
I really like the scenes where you're looking out through the eyes of the giraffe and looking at the landscape. It's kind of gives you a different perspective. I really like that about part of it. There is a theme that came up through this, especially the second book, and that is betrayal. There's a lot of betrayals going on, a lot of twists in the plots. And I wanted to ask you a question about Adana and Giffen, because it seems like she is a bit more worldly and kind of picks up on things that might be a little off. And the prince seems a little more innocent and naive about things. And I'm wondering if that's a fair take on those two characters.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
She's dealt with more life than he has. She's the one who got uprooted. She's the one who got sent away when her mother passed away in the beginning of the first book. She got sent to Elwar, which is Kiffin's kingdom, for her protection until she's of age to reign. So she's had a lot of loss, and she's a fish out of water. And this is all happening at a crucial point in her training. And I mean, You saw how Quilla worked with her. Quilla's the queen in Elwar, and Quilla sees her as a savage and does not really appreciate her one bit. And so he makes life difficult for her. And there's just a lot of things that just go wrong in her life. So she has learned that life doesn't always go the way you want it. You don't always get what you want. She's decided you can't trust the creator to do what you really want him to do. And if the creator does do what you want him to do, he makes it hard. And Kiffin lost his mother, yeah, when he
Right.
was young. And he has this stepmother that's not wonderful. And, he lost his brother. But at the same point, Kiffin hasn't had the rug yanked out from under him. Now, he does get that between the first and the second book, but he's years behind her in dealing with trauma and crisis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I never thought about it that way, and I'm actually glad to hear that because he has insight, and sometimes I'm like, am I making him too insightful? So I'm glad to hear that he may be book insightful, as far as learning how to do war and strategy and politics, but reality insightful, maybe not so much.
Yeah, well, he's an endearing character. He's an endearing character. So we probably should let people know that these two people are betrothed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some forces that do not want them to get married and all the political intrigue. So this story, of course, has a villain because all fantasies do.
Mhm.
And Lord Malagon, am I pronouncing that right?
You are. It's
Okay.
Malagon. Yes.
Okay, and so he's a pretty bad guy. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering why he is so intent on taking control of Mania. What's his backstory? A little bit of his backstory.
Well, Malagon is, there are 4 kingdoms in the story. And so there's Mania, which is Adonis' kingdom, and Elwar, which is Kiffin's. But there are 2 other kingdoms that are their allies, and they're Belwyn and Talisto. Malagon was born to a royal in Belwyn, but he was the result of a rape. So he is not allowed to rule, and that bothers him. And we find out throughout the story, and I don't even remember which book it comes out in. I think some of it comes out in the second book,
Mhm.
that he was kind of shuffled off to Mania to be a page because they're like, he's an embarrassment, we don't know what to do with him. And the one person who was actually caring and loving to him passed away early in his life. And so he's sent to Mania, and he becomes infatuated with Queen Kiora, who is actually Adonna's mother, and thinks he's going to marry her, but that doesn't turn out. And he ends up starting a war called Malagon's War, to try to conquer her, and he plans to marry her is what he plans to do, but he doesn't win. In fact, the man who is Adonna's father, which is Micah, he's a stranger who comes from the northern lands, and he kind of usurps Malagon's plans and ends up being the one to marry the queen and so forth. And Malagon gets exiled to the desert, but the exile he's given should have killed him.
Well, well, like I said, I'm up to the end of book 2. And when I got to the end of book 2, there were some battle scenes right before the end.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, I don't know how this is incredible. I don't know how they're going to move forward. This is a pretty bad situation. And I'm wondering, the battle scenes and the strategy of the battle scenes, I thought were really excellent. So
Good.
again, did you do some studying on that, or did you figure that out on your own?
So here's what happened. While I was writing this book, I'm a member of South Carolina Writers Association. They used to be South Carolina Writers Workshop. And I met Faith Hunter, who is an amazing fantasy author.
Okay.
And I did a good turn for her. And she said, you know what? I want to be here for you. Can I help you? And I said, I'm trying to finish this book. Can you keep the fire burning under me? And so she said, yeah, I will do that. And so periodically we just touch base, and I'm working on it, Well, I was trying to write that battle scene, and I kept writing other stuff. I'd start to write the scene and something else would happen. I'm like, why am I not writing this battle scene? So I emailed her and I said, I need to write this battle, and I can't seem to write this battle. Every time I get ready to write this battle, I write something different. And I said, I think I'm avoiding it. She says, you are. And so she told me a method to plot it out. She said, get yourself, a whiteboard or poster board, get stickers or markers, and map this baby out and figure out what's going on, so that when you write it, there's no gap, that everything flows together. And somewhere I actually have a picture of that. I did it on a piece of poster, flip chart paper, and I used Post-it notes. And I actually figured out some things about the fortress in Manaya at that point that I did not know. I was like, oh, okay, we need to make sure that they can't get in here and they can't get, so it showed me some things I didn't know. There is a section of the third book where I had to do that again, because I had so many moving parts and people all in the same location, but not interacting. And I needed to make sure they didn't run into each other, and that they avoided each other. And so I had to sit down and do the exact same thing again. But once I did that, I sat down and I wrote the battle scene, and it worked.
That's great. And that's a great tip. If we have any authors watching this, that's a great method for getting through it. And it shows in the writing, because I was following the strategy and watching who was moving where and what was happening and why one person was winning and one person wasn't. So it worked. It's a beautiful plan. I'll have to remember that when I plot out my scene.
Ask me if you get confused. I'll remind you.
Yeah. Okay. This is just kind of a fun aside question. What was one of the strangest or oddest things you found yourself Googling writing this story?
What does a boar sound out like when you kill it? You remember in the first book when the boar is in the forest?
Yes.
I spent hours on YouTube listening to the sounds of boars dying when they were hunted.
That's good. That's a good one, Barbara.
Yeah, I was like, I've got to figure that out. So that was the one that's always stuck with me. Is like, I can't believe I spent the whole afternoon doing this.
I don't know if, for those people that aren't authors, know all the weird stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we have to do, but it's kind of fun. If it's really kind of fun. Sometimes it's a little grim if you're looking at how, what a wound looks like or how an injury is going to be. It can be a little grim, but we're writing fantasy, so it's part of the deal.
Right.
At this point, I'd like to share your info sheet. Let me get that up, and we can, because I want people to see the actual books. So let me get that screen shared. Oh, where did it go? Okay. Actually, let me go back up to the top. Pardon me. So there you are. And how was weather down there in South Carolina?
It's a little cloudy today, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We're supposed to be getting storms, but so far we haven't gotten them.
Okay. And you are an award-winning novelist. I want people to know that. And this is what I wanted to get down to is your book covers of the series. So those are, and if you want to contact Barbara, there's her webpage. I see that you have a collection of short stories. Are they fantasy, or is it a mixed genre?
This one actually is a little more mixed genre. I wanted to get something out in 2022, and so I have several short stories that have been published in other publications. And I had a couple of them that I just never found the right place to submit them to. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put this thing together, and I just put it out myself. And I created my own little imprint called Camel Leopard Press, because camel leopard is part of the scientific name for a giraffe. But the stories are more along the lines of women's fiction. There's also a weird
Okay.
nature story. There is a story in there that is magical realism. So there's a broad spectrum, and I hesitate to say women's fiction, but I don't know what else to call it, to be honest with you. I do plan to put out a speculative fiction short story
Okay.
collection sometime this year.
And before we started recording, Barbara, you were telling me that you're going to be retaining rights for the books and
Right.
working on them. You want to share a little bit more about that?
Right. So the 3 books in the fantasy trilogy, The Watchers of Mania, Watchers in Exile, and Watchers at War, I have gotten my rights back from my publisher, and I'm going to be republishing them in the near future. They're going to have new covers. They're going to have some updates inside them, fix some of the errors, a few things along those lines. There's not a lot, but I'm going through with a fine-tooth comb looking, and they'll be coming back out soon. But you can find out more about them on my website, and I actually do still have some in my inventory. I'm headed to JordanCon in a few weeks, so I will have books with me.
All right, I'm just scrolling down for the final comments. You've got some other things coming out. Oh, I did want to ask you about that. Let me take the screen down so I can talk directly with you again. What is, will there be more books in the Mania series? Are you moving on to a whole new world, or what's next for you?
Okay. At the moment, I have just finished polishing up an urban fantasy that tentatively is called Punched in Purple. And I hope for this to be a series based on this organization of women called Enchanters. The goal with that is to get it published and hopefully have multiple books following it. The Watchers, there's going to be more. There are so many stories that I could tell from that series.
Yes.
And for one thing, I could go back and tell the stories of the parents. I want to probably write either a novella or a very short novel on Malagon's story. You asked about Malagon. I think he deserves a story. And, Gabriella, who is the Empress of Belwen, where he's from, is part of that story. So I think that there's going to be a story there. We need to know a little bit more, because you found out some secrets about Gabriella in the second book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so some things going on there. And in the third book, which I know you haven't read yet, Shanna really takes off. And so I think Shanna has a book in her too. So there are other books that can definitely come out of it. How many? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's opportunity. So I do at some point hope to write some more things within that world.
I think that's great, because there are some, besides the 2 main characters, there's a lot of other interesting people, and it would be great to read about their backstory. I think that would really be fascinating. All right, I think we are coming to the close, and I encourage you all to check out Barbara's work, and I look forward to reading book 3 and also any new backstory that comes out. I'm looking forward to it. It's been the one more impression I wanted to say before we closed is that the visuals in the book are really beautiful. The kingdom, how it's described, or the various kingdoms, how it's described. I thought it was really easy to visualize not only the characters, but the scenes and the landscape, which I really appreciate place in stories. So
Right.
if you like that in a book, please check out Barbara's work. And I appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Barbara, for sharing time with me today. I really, really appreciate you coming.
So much.
All
I
right.
appreciate being able to do it. And I just want to mention one other thing is
Yes.
on that thing, the page you put up, there was a link for my newsletter. And I do put short stories in my newsletters. And
Great. Okay.
I believe Janet subscribes to it. There was recently a story that was a 3-part story that was built in the Manayan Kingdom. And also, if you subscribe, you get a short story from the beginning of the book that was actually pulled out of the book and never actually appeared in the book. So there are ways to get more.
Great. I will make sure that there's a link to your webpage below the recording when I post it on YouTube, so people can easily click to go to your webpage to sign up for that, because I subscribe, of course, to your newsletter, and I think it's really interesting, and you've given us some backstory, which is really fun. And for all of you that are joining us, if you like this, please subscribe to the channel. I'm having a blast interviewing authors that I've read and enjoyed their work, and I'm going to continue that, hopefully with at least 1 or 2 interviews a month. So please hit the follow button, and we'll see you at our next interview. Again, thank you, Barbara, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.